Hey guys. Trying to manifest summer by wearing something a little bit more summery. It's also very hot in my apartment. It's so paradoxical that in the winter in New York City, we heat our apartments so freaking hot. But anybody who lives here or probably in the Northeast at all, you know that is the case. So today I wanted to do my first walkthrough video, and I was inspired to do this by just how beautiful this deck is. So for Christmas, my husband gave me the Threadbound Oracle. And this is one of my most coveted decks, actually kind of ever. I wanted it for a long time, and then I got it. I love everything about it. It's got books. It's got a lot of books. It's about book reading and book binding. And as somebody who studied like the physical properties of books in the past, I find it really interesting that this oracle doesn't deal just with reading books or stories, but actual physical books. So I love that materiality about it. Comes with a really nice little book. Sorry if I have to move things around. I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm not quite used to showing things to the camera yet. I think I'll get used to it. But anyway, so I like this little book a lot. It has with every card, it has meanings, awakened and shadow meanings. So you can see that there. Awakened and shadow meanings. And it gives a few keywords for each. So like for the antagonist, the keywords for the awakened side are opposition, deceit, and malice. And the shadow side are apology, reconciliation, and redemption. And that's a little bit of a strange one, obviously, because the antagonist is negative in the beginning. So the shadow meaning is not the negative. It's like positive, actually. But one thing I really like about this deck too is in this book is how thoughtful the shadow side meanings often are. I think it's not just the opposite. As anybody who reads tarot knows, it's really frustrating when people think of it just as the opposite if something is reversed, because that's often really reductive, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what the opposite of something would even be. Like it sends you into this weird mental spiral, trying to even figure out what it would be. But like for instance, one of the opposites of the artist is perfectionism. So the upright meaning is creativity, and one of the shadow meanings is perfectionism. And so it's like perfectionism or overwork. So that's kind of counter to what we would think. We would think, I guess, that the opposite of being creative is being lazy or being being blocked. But actually, in this one, perfectionism can also be the shadow. So it's less this like the opposite of meaning and more like what we really would think of as a shadow meaning, in that the card, when it's reversed, or maybe even when it's upright and you just get the feeling that the shadow meaning is implied, it doesn't mean the opposite of whatever the awakened meaning is. It means perhaps an extreme of, or a negative implication or consequence of what the awakened meaning would mean. So I think the book is really thoughtful and really useful. And whenever I've used this deck, it has been like really spot on, like scary spot on when I've used the book to explain the meanings. And I'm not a person who generally uses the book to understand meanings. I generally try to be pretty intuitive when I read. And I think a lot of the time that is because a lot of books, the quote unquote little white books that come with your tarot decks are not really that great a lot of the time. But I think this book is like worth it's worth the deck, honestly. I feel like it's even, like it's worth at least as much as the deck. And the deck is amazing, so that's saying something. So anyway, let me stop talking about that and show you the deck. So this is it. So this is the healer here. And the thing that a lot of people have said about this deck, which is obvious, is that it's very diverse. It's also very colorful. So there's like so many good things about this deck. And so, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this. These are basically sort of the major arcana of this deck. And this deck is a tarot-like oracle. It's described as a tarot-like oracle. The structure is similar to that of tarot. So if you're familiar with working with tarot, you probably won't have much trouble getting used to working with these cards. The moon. Again, this is like one place where you really see the tarot influence come out. Oh, I want to say about this, I love how many cards there are in this deck with multiple people on them. This is not like a very individualistic deck. I feel like this deck really emphasizes the journey of the self in relation to other people, in a community, in a family, etc. And that's something I really like about it, because I think a lot of the time with esoteric symbolism and even with the tarot as a journey, the fool's journey, and I'm not saying that there's no element of community or anything like that in the tarot. I think there is, and depending on how you read it, there certainly could be even more of that. But I just really like the emphasis on more than one person. And because I think that's like, it just resonates with me. I think that's more how I live, and I think that's how a lot of people live, really, is in relation. And real quick, I don't think that there's like an order to these cards, actually, to the story cards, except for that the end probably comes at the end. But other than that, I don't think that there's really an order, because the book just goes in alphabetical order. So if I could be mistaken about that, but if there's an order, I don't actually know what it is. So I just showed you those in the order that they were all story cards, but I didn't show them to you in any particular order. Cool. And that's it. And I also appreciate just that this is like a sort of short oracle deck. It's not as many cards as tarot. I haven't had any trouble, learning the meanings or anything like that. And I've used it for myself quite a few times. And like I said, the meanings and the readings that I get, not only the individual cards, but the readings as a whole have been spooky accurate. And I think, a lot of tarot is interpretation. A lot of reading cards is explaining how it relates to your life. But just some of the things that I've found have been beyond that, beyond using your intuition and making the reading make sense for your life. I've rarely had to do a lot of work to understand or to make something apply. So yeah, I think part of that is because it's so relatable. I think the imagery that's used is really material. Again, it's like related to the real world. It's related to community, to the communities that we actually exist in. It looks really diverse, so you can see yourself no matter who you are in this deck. There's like different body sizes, different races and ethnicities. There's different like sexual orientations. Like on the song card, there were the two women who were obviously lovers. So like there's different like genders represented. It's just very, very inclusive. So I think that also helps.
Okay, so this deck has 3 minor suits. So they're paper, ink, and fiber. And I'm going to start with paper and just show you the cards from those. So the ace, 2, and I wanted to say about this deck, I really like that it deals not just with story, but also book binding. So here the 4 of paper is signature. I think that's really cool because I work with books, often books that have been hand bound, archival materials, and particularly I've worked with journals and newspapers, and those often use. I mean, all books often have signatures, but it's often really apparent with a newspaper or a journal because sometimes they aren't even stapled. It's just a number of pages folded to be like a pamphlet. So I think that's really super cool that that this deck looks at the transformation of paper in that way. And finally, the 7 of paper cover. And then this is the Ace of fiber, just thread. Oh, I love the 6 of thread stitch. I really think that these minors are very thoughtful too. So like here you have repetition, rhythm, and technique. It's also very craft and process based, which I think is really interesting, especially for us as witches to think about the ways that this sort of craft of bookbinding can be applied to our craft. And then you have the 7 of thread tapestry, which is obviously one thing that could be made up of all of these threads. And again, it's very communal. You have interdependence, wisdom, and ancestry. And then we have the Ace of ink, pigment. Again, I really like the meanings of this one: alchemy, process, and experimentation. So again, I think you can really see how that would apply to witchcraft. The 2 of ink, medium. It's interesting. It's the thing that carries the pigment and makes the ink. And then the 3 of ink, well, joy, resourcefulness, abundance. The 4 of ink, pen, manifestation, communication, and clarity. 5 of ink, solvent. I like this because it's a card that in itself is like very shadowy. I think often we think of shadow in terms of reversal, but this card itself is very shadowy. It's about forgiveness and mistakes. 6 of ink, calligraphy. And the 7 of ink, illumination. Yeah, and that one obviously is, I think, illumination, like as in an illuminated manuscript. So it's something that all of this ink could make up.
But yeah, I basically just wanted to show my awesome Christmas gift, and I don't know, hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, this is my first like walkthrough video, so if you like that kind of thing, let me know, and I'll do more of them as I get more tarot decks and more oracle decks. So my birthday is coming up, so now would be the time to let me know. So all right, see you guys around.